Hi, I'm Scott Salzman, Web Discovery Librarian at Furman University.
And I'm Christy Allen, Assistant Director for Discovery Services at Furman University. This is the first in a 3-video series on web accessibility. We're going to share some basic action-oriented information that will make a big difference in the accessibility of the web pages that we create.
So what is web accessibility? The World Wide Web Consortium's Web Accessibility Initiative defines it quite simply as meaning that people with disabilities can use the web. The initiative goes on to say that web accessibility encompasses all disabilities that affect access to the web, including visual, auditory, physical, speech, cognitive, and neurological disabilities. Web accessibility can also benefit someone with a temporary disability, like a broken arm, which might prevent them from using a mouse.
Web accessibility contributes toward equal opportunity, access, and inclusion for people with diverse abilities. It's also required under several federal laws, including the Americans with Disabilities Act and the Rehabilitation Act. Anytime our colleges or universities admit a student who has a disability, federal law requires us to provide that student with equivalent access to educational materials and services.
Achieving 100% accessibility of your web pages can be very challenging and may require changes to the website that are outside of your control. The basic accessibility techniques that we'll cover here make a big difference, and they're also pretty easy to do. First, let's talk about screen readers. This is software that reads the contents of a web page out loud so that users who are blind or have low vision can use the web. Screen readers and other assistive technologies use keyboard commands to navigate a web page. Using the keyboard, you can move forward or backward sequentially through the contents of a page. On a long or complex page, that can be pretty tedious and inefficient. But if the web page has a structure, users can jump from one structural element to another.
In other words, think of a web page like a book. If you were handed a book with no table of contents, no chapters, no page numbers, and no index, how would you be able to locate specific content without reading the entire book? Building in structures improves the usability of a book, just like building structures within a web page will improve its usability for everyone, but particularly for people who rely on screen readers.
There are a number of different screen readers that are in common use. For demonstration purposes, we're going to use NVDA, which is the most commonly used free screen reader that is available for Windows. We've created 2 example web pages to illustrate both accessible and inaccessible content authoring practices. As you can see, they appear to be very similar, but they have very different levels of accessibility to users of screen readers.
Let's start by looking at our accessible example page. There are several structural elements on this page that I'd like to point out. There are headings which divide the content into sections. Going back to our book example, these are analogous to the titles of chapters and subchapters. We also have lists on this page. When reading a properly formatted list, a screen reader will read out the number of items in the list. I'd also like to point out that this page contains 2 images which would be invisible to a screen reader unless they were accompanied by text-based descriptions. The basic structural elements we've looked at can provide a framework for understanding the organization of the web page and allow screen reader users to navigate to specific content without reading every word on the page.
Let's see how the NVDA screen reader interprets this page. While it's reading the page aloud, please take note of how it announces the different elements, like headings, lists, and images.
Heading Level 1 Accessible Example. Heading Level 2 Introduction to Web Accessibility. List with 3 items. Bullet Professional, Ethical and Legal Aspects. Bullet Demonstration of User Experience for Screen Reader Users. Bullet Importance of Page Structure out of list. Graphic Structural Elements impart meaning. Heading Level 2 Practical Tips for Getting Started with Web Accessibility. List with 5 items. Bullet Use Headings. Bullet Use Lists. Bullet Use Meaningful Link Text. Bullet Use Adequate Color Contrast. Bullet Use Alternate Text for Images out of list.
Now let's take a look at our inaccessible page example. In this inaccessible example page, we didn't use any structural elements, so that you'll be able to hear the difference in the amount of information conveyed by a screen reader. Note that visually it looks very similar to our accessible example. However, there is very little structure in this page, so the screen reader treats the page as a single block of text. Also, you'll notice that the screen reader completely ignores the images because we haven't provided descriptive text for them.
Heading Level 1 Inaccessible Example Introduction to Web Accessibility Professional, Ethical and Legal Aspects Demonstration of User Experience for Screen Reader Users Importance of Page Structure Practical Tips for Getting Started with Web Accessibility Use headings, use lists, use meaningful link text, use adequate color contrast, use alternate text for images.
On a page like this, it would be impossible for a screen reader user to navigate by jumping from one heading to another, or to skip to the end of a long list of items, because those structural elements are not present.
Now that we've seen the basics of how screen readers work and how important it is to use the appropriate structural elements, let's look at how easy it is to create these elements in our next video, Practical Tips for Getting Started with Web Accessibility.